Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending at what time you're watching this episode. Welcome, hopefully welcome back to Data-Driven Formula One. My name is Patrick Henz, and I welcome you to this show today. Maybe we start a little bit differently than normally. We start with a little bit unboxing. Here I have a car which I really have for a long time. It was done by Matchbox, British company, and it's from the 1980s. They had their special series of classic cars, which they called models of yesterday. And there they had this subgroup of Grand Prix cars, where they had a Ferrari, Bugatti, for example, and also they had this car. This is a 1957 Maserati 200F Lightweight. Here, see, still original box, so really great. Let's unbox it. Getting it out. Okay. So what you will see here, car from Maserati, one of the manufacturers, part of the really beginning of Formula One, and also already produced successful racing cars before Formula One officially had its first race back in 1946. And then, of course, they've been a founding member of the Formula One World Championship. So really great car, 12 cylinders. And I know my gunner, with whom I normally doing this podcast, had the pleasure to sit in such of this car as she had the opportunity at one of the museums. So really very beautiful, and we always recommend reading books, or also if you have the opportunity, visit the museums. The Maserati Museum in the Emilia Romagna would be, of course, such a recommendation if you have time. For example, if you're having like 1 week spent in and around Maranello, there are a couple of museums, like two Ferrari museums, Ducati, two museums dedicated to Maserati, the official one and the one from Panini. Yes, Panini, the company where you maybe bought as a child the collecting cards, if football, if TV series. For example, I remember my Captain Future collection, also from Panini, Star Wars collecting cards, and so on. So the founder had been big Maserati fan, and there you find some real rare ones. And also, I think there's the Lamborghini Museum. But enough of this. Let's delve into today's episode, being around Ferrari from Formula One to Formula E. As I've already shortly mentioned, Maserati started building race cars even before Formula One, but as we are a Formula One podcast, video podcast, we start there, and we will talk a little bit about Formula E and my personal perception, opinion of Formula E, what I like about it, what I maybe don't like that much about it, and it's my personal perception, which you can share or you cannot share, however. The Maserati brothers The Maserati brothers, Alfieri, Bindo, Carlo, Ettore, and Ernesto, were all involved with automobiles from the beginning of the 20th century. Alfieri, Bindo, and Ernesto built 2-liter Grand Prix cars for Diatto, which had been like similar to today's Formula One series. In 1926, Diatto suspended the production of race cars, leading to the creation of the first Maserati and the founding of the Maserati marque. One of the first Maseratis driven by Alfiero won the 1926 Targa Florio, the famous street race, endurance race south of Italy. Maserati began making race cars with 4, 6, 8, and 16 cylinders, two straight eights mounted parallel to one and another. Here on the right, you see the photo of the four brothers posing before their factory. Classic photo. Of course, still no Instagram, no TikTok. So a classic photo, and you see really this classic factory design, really beautiful. And speaking about seeing, this is a audio enhanced podcast. We like to call it because we mostly it's about us, Ghana and my person talking, but we try always to show you images, photos of the time, which underlines a little bit what we are saying. So you can see us, YouTube, of course, YouTube Music or Spotify. On the other platforms, you can only hear us. So, for example, if you're driving yourself, you may prefer the audio-only version, but if you have the opportunity, we always recommend the video version. The Maserati brothers, we have first Carlo. He lived 1880 to 1910. Bicycle and automotive engineer, bicycle racer, test driver for Fiat and Isotto Fraschini, which also have been reanimated today for endurance racing. Today, I mean 2024. Bindo, 1893 to 1980, automotive engineer, mechanic, and race driver at Isotto Fraschini, which really back in the time was a relevant company. Alfieri the first, he only lived 1 year, 1885 to 1886. The parents decided to dedicate this name to his next child. So we have Alfieri II, who lived 1887 to 1935, and he had been an automotive engineer, and he was the one who established Maserati as a company. Mario, 1819, 1980, a little bit the black sheep, you may say so. But of course, ironically, it's great to have also a painter in the family. And you see, he became quite old in 1819, 1981. Ettore, 1894 to 1990, also he, quite long life. Automotive engineer and manager. And also Ernesto became 77 years old, 1898, 1975, automotive engineer and racer. So great family history. They lived in the same area as, for example, Enzo Ferrari. In general, we have this automotive cluster, as it's called today in the Emilia-Romagna, this region in Italy, having companies like Ducati, Lamborghini, Ferrari, Maserati. Meaning we had a great, of course, infrastructure, competitive atmosphere where employees, of course, got the education they need to be successful in motorsports. But of course, having these companies in a quite small region does not mean that everybody have been big friends. There have been big competition and sometimes also unfriendly competition. And maybe you saw the Enzo Ferrari movie earlier this year. And here it was already shown that they really not liked each other that much. But let's go back to the Maserati brothers. Speaking about Alfieri, he won a number of races in the 1920s, and he was the head mechanic for Diatto from 1922 until 26, when he joined his brothers and they created the Maserati Tipo 26 based on Diatto chassis he had brought. In 1927, while racing his Type 26 at the 312-kilometer De First Coppa Messina on the circuit of Monte Piloriatani, Alfieri lost control in the first lap and the car overturned after hitting a ditch. Alfieri was gravely injured. He had emergency surgery, one of his kidneys being irreparably damaged. In 1932, during a poorly executed surgery on the remaining kidney, Alfieri died unexpectedly from complications while the recovery room on the 3rd of March in Ospedale Maggiore in Bologna. He was commemorated in the Maserati Alfieri concept car, the car you see on this page. It was presented in 2014 for the 100-year anniversary of Maserati. So this is about the oldest, born September 23 in 1887 in Voghera, Pavia, Italy. And then, as mentioned, unfortunately, early death, March 3 in 1932 in Bologna. Of course, his nationality had been Italian. Adolfo. In 1937, Orsi, Maserati, no, sorry, Adolfo Orsi, not one of the brothers, reborn 1888 until 1972, bought the financial troubled Maserati company, employing his son Omar Orsi as managing director. Three of the Maserati brothers were retained on 10-year contracts on the engineering team. In 1940, Orsi moved the Maserati headquarters from Bologna to Modena, both in the Emilia-Romagna, where I said we have a high cluster of motorsports companies, near the premises of his steel plants and spark plug manufacturing company Fonderia Reunite. I mean, remember also Enzo Ferrari's father came had a small steel workshop. So this really, we are speaking here about a quite industrial region. In 1949, with Maserati temporarily closed for restructuring, a steel mill worker strike action following Orsi's refusal to hire communist workers resulted in a series of hard encounters on June 9, 1950, leaving a few protesters dead. When the foundries were reopened in 52, Orsi decided to sell the company, splitting it with his siblings. Adolfo kept the Maserati car manufacturing business, his brother Marcello kept the foundries, and their sister Ida Orsi took charge of the motorbike manufacturing, the Società Anonima Fabbrica Candele Accumulatori Maserati, 1953-1960. In 1950s proved to be a successful decade for Maserati. Orsi hired his brother-in-law Alceste Giacomazzi as new general director and succeeded in luring Ferrari employee Alberto Massimo to Maserati in time from 1944 to 55, as well as hiring Juan Manuel Fangio in 1953. Fangio went to win the Formula One World Championship with Maserati in 54 and 57. If you saw the Enzo Ferrari movie, you saw one scene where Enzo Ferrari was commenting that yes, Maserati got this star driver, the number one at that time, you may say, comparable later, Senna, Schumacher, Verstappen, and of course, paying him a relatively high salary for the time. And Enzo Ferrari speculated that this will bring Maserati in financial problems, but indeed happened later. In 1954, Orsi made a lucrative deal with Juan Perón, the the Argentinian president. You see here on the photo with his wife Evita. When the motor racing enthusiast president of Argentina placed a large order for machine tools to be imported in his country. The plan was, in general, to present Argentina as a country of tomorrow, aligning motorsports with the success of the government, a strategy which we saw in Europe before World War II. And also there had been the plan to establish Argentinian car manufacturing companies, which really happened, but they didn't last that long. However, following the Revolución Libertadora and the exile of Perón, receiving payments for the order turned out to be problematic. Also encountered similar issues with the Spanish government, and the ensuing financial problems resulted in Maserati entering administration. The remnants of Maserati was handled by the Crédito Italiano, so there had been various factors leading to the situation Maserati getting into financial problems. Yes, maybe also the salary of Juan Manuel Fangio had been one factor, but maybe I would say a smaller of these factors, but everything together leading to problems. Orsi remained active within the management of Maserati until 1968, when he decided to sell his remaining shares to Citroën, who at the time was a major stakeholder. Omar Orsi's son, Adolfo Orsi Jr., born 1951, is involved as a consultant on the history of Maserati. Again, I hope you can see a little the photos because Maserati, as a luxury manufacturer, was the choice of kings and presidents. And here you have four examples. For example, the Maserati Quattroporto V8, a car used by King Juan Carlos of Spain, as you see here on the photo with the flags. Also, the Maserati Quattroporto, for Italian, four parts, four doors, has been used by the Italian president since 1979. So here you see not the exact car of the president, but the car in general. The Maserati 5000 GT Scia di Persia, as you can conclude already from the name, was used by the Shah of Persia, who had also good taste in luxury cars. Then you see the 1966 Maserati Mexico. And I think this we discussed in the episode about the Ricardo brothers, the two famous Mexican racers. The Mexican president had a Maserati, unfortunately had an accident and sold his car back to Maserati, who used this as a base for their prototype, and called this prototype then Maserati Mexico. And due to the good perception at the motor expositions, they sold this car then also to wealthy consumers. That's why it has the name Maserati Mexico, because they received it's based on the damaged car which they received from the Mexican president. And as you may imagine, President Perón not only liked to promote the country with motorsports, but also had a personal collection of them. And one of this was the Maserati A6G from 1956, also used by himself and also by his wife, Evita. Speaking a bit about the technology now, the Maserati race cars, which we saw in the Formula One Championship, which started 1950, even though we had motorsports already before. And that's why one of the cars is the 4CLT, which was originally produced in 48, but still used 2 years later. It was used by the official racing team, the Officini Alfieri Maserati, but also Maserati always had the business concept to sell their cars to the various private gentleman drivers and private teams, such as Scuderia Ambrosiana, Enrico Platte, Scuderia Achille Vassi, and the German or Austrian Paul Bitsch. Also, we have the Maserati 4CL, which was used by Joe Fry, the Scuderia Achille Vassi, and Antonio Branca. And the same year, we also see the 4CLTL, and here the new version, the 1950, already constructed directly based on Formula One regulations. And this was used by Scuderia Milano. Then season 1952, here we see still the 4 years old, then 4CLTL 48 used by Enrico Plate, the Maserati A6 GCM, and this had been the new one used by Officini Alfieri Maserati and the Scuderia Bandeirantes. Now 54, and here the Maserati 250F, which I already showed you. Yep, this is the one, 12-cylinder engine. It was used, of course, as it was the newest development by the works team Officine Alfieri Maserati, Écurie Rossier, Herichel, Roberto Mieres, Birabonce Banujay, own racing organization, and Gilby Engineering. The Maserati A6 GCM that year had been used also Officini Alferetti Maserati, Herichel, Emanuel de Grafenried, Roberto Mieres, Jorge da Ponte, Onofre Marimon, and Giovanni de Rui. Maserati retired from factory racing participation because of the Grisio tragedy during the 1957 Mille Miglia, so they continued to build cars for private use. Maserati became more and more focused on building road-going grand tours and went away from motorsports. 57, this is the tragedy which was shown in the Enzo Ferrari movie, where the main, of course, it was involved Ferrari, but also it was the reason Maserati decided to go away from motorsports, at least as a works team, or at least it was one of the reason. Yes, there had been this tragedy, there had been big discussions in Italian society about motorsports, but as mentioned, Maserati also had been in financial problems at that time. So, as always, there's not black and white, one reason for doing something, but a combination of reasons. The road between Salongo and Guricilo in the communal territory of Caviana was the location of Alfonso de Botago's fatal accident driving the Ferrari in the 57 Mille where 12 people died, and this included two children. The memorial of the roadside commemorates you can see here on the photo. Nevertheless, 1960 Maserati returned as a name in Formula One, but this time as a provider of engine, mostly for the Cooper, the T45 and the T51 as used by the Scuderia Centro Sud and Gilby Engineering. Nevertheless, some of the smaller private teams still continued using the Maserati 250F, which not had been competitive anymore to fight for victories or points, but still a good vehicle to participate at the races. So it was used by Giorgio Scarlatti, Nassif Estiviano, Antonio Cruz, Gino Monaron, Ettore Chimeri, and Joe Lubin. 1966, we have here, and you can see it on the photo, the Cooper Maserati T81. It was used by various teams, Cooper Car Company, Rob Walker Racing Team, and please look out for our episode on Rob Walker Racing, Anglo-Swiss Racing Team, and Guy Ligier, also famous name. And last victory for Maserati in Formula One until today, and also the next years, because there are no plans that Maserati will return to Formula One. And this was by later Formula One champion John Surtees at the Mexican Grand Prix. At the Mexican Grand Prix at this time had been quite at the end of the season, where maybe it was already decided who had been the champion, which manufacturer, which drivers. So a lot of times to save money, European teams not traveled overseas to the Mexican or US races. And that's why there had been a little bit less competition. And this enabled smaller teams to fight for points and victories. And here, John Surtees, of course, very successful, experienced drivers, used his opportunity and won the Mexican Grand Prix with the Cooper Maserati T81 as seen here on the photo. In 1968, Maserati was taken over by Citroën, the French car manufacturer. Adolfo Orsi remained the nominal president, but Maserati was controlled by its new owner. The relationship started as a joint venture made public in January 68, in which Maserati would design and manufacture an engine for Citroën's upcoming flagship called the SM, which you see here on the photo. And for many including myself, one of the most beautiful cars maybe ever produced, and you really have to see it in person to appreciate technology and design. In 1971, the Bora was the company's first serious production mid-engine model, an idea agreed with administrator Guy Mayet shortly after the '68 takeover. The Bora ended Maserati's reputation for producing fast but technologically out-of-date cars, being the first Maserati with four-wheel independent suspension. So something also thanks to the cooperation with Citroën, and you see this also very beautiful car on the right. Then another famous name, De Tomaso. On May 22, 1975, a press release from Citroën management abruptly announced Maserati had been put into liquidation. Again, the workforce immediately picketed the factory, but production was not halted. Trade unions, the mayor of Modena, and local politicians mobilized to save the 800 jobs. Industry Minister Carlo Donat Cattin even flew to Paris to meet Citroën chairman François Royer. An agreement was reached in June after several meetings and assemblies. During one of these meetings, Citroën executives disclosed that a possible Italian buyer had showed up and the name of Alejandro De Tomaso was put forth for the first time. Citroën accepted to suspend liquidation as requested by the Italian government, which on its part guaranteed 6 months of special redundancy fund to pay the salaries. Quite interesting move because De Tomaso was a quite small company. So here a small company acquired a big company, of course, backed by governmental founding. Normally, such moves are not that often successful. So let's see how here the history continues. On August 8 in 1975, an agreement was signed at the Ministry of Industry in Rome, and property of Maserati passed from Citroën to Italian state-owned holding company Gepi and Alejandro De Tomaso, an Argentinian industrialist with Italian legacy and former racing driver. De Tomaso became president and CEO. As of December 1979, Gepi's quota amounted to 88.75% of Maserati. The remaining 11.25% stake was being controlled by the De Tomaso Group, through a holding company which grouped his automotive interests in Maserati and Innocenti, which had been a company producing small cars, later becoming part of Lancia, and the Innocenti is practically still today somehow alive, as it was the base of the Lancia Y, which is produced still today, of course, in new versions. After De Tomaso bought Maserati in August '75, he dismissed long-time chef engineer Alfieri on the day of taking over the business. On the right, you see here Alejandro De Tomaso and also the 1970 De Tomaso Cosworth car, which only we saw 1 year in Formula One, a car which unfortunately never had been competitive, even though it was deployed by Frank Williams Racing Cars, which is non-official forerunner for Williams Racing. There's not a straight line because Frank Williams sold his business and then started again a new business. So it's not just that they changed the name from Frank Williams Racing to Williams. Frank Williams sold his business and then started again a new company. Also, unfortunately, with this car, we had a fatal accident that year in Formula One. Okay, let's fast forward 1970s to more modern times, 2020s. On January 10, 2022, Maserati announced it would enter Formula E as a manufacturer in partnership with a yet-to-be-announced team. Its debut in the electric single-seater category was scheduled for 2022-23 seasons, marking its return to single-seater racing after 65 years. When the manufacturer had last competed in Formula One in 1957, ignoring the fact that they have been the engine manufacturer in the '60s. As a result, Maserati will become the first Italian constructor and manufacturer to compete in Formula E. It makes sense because at that time we still had Ferrari and Alfa Romeo in Formula One, and logically to look for another brand of the Stellantis group to be active in other series, like for example Formula E, to address other target groups. Maserati's entry into Formula E as an official powertrain partner of Monaco Sports Group Racing. It made possible after additional brand guidelines specially adapted by Formula E in early 2022 paved the way for the Italian manufacturer to become an additional Stellantis brand in the category along DS Automobiles, DS, which is somehow related to Citroën. So we have both of them together now. As such, Maserati will use under its brand powertrains designed and developed by DS. Again, uh, they're now part of Stellantis, which is the original trademark of Stellantis, under which Maserati also belongs to. Subsequently, on April 7, an agreement was announced for multi-year partnerships between Maserati and Venturi Racing for the Maserati Formula E team to operate from Venturi's base and structure in Monaco. With this deal, the Venturi name would be retired, which had been present on Formula E grid since its inaugural season. However, most of Venturi's remaining structure will remain, of course. Driver for the first season had been Eduardo Mortora, Swiss driver, and Maximilian Günther from Germany. And here you see the Formula E Maserati for the first season. As you see, Maserati is the team, and Maserati is DS Stellantis is the provider for the powertrain. Formula E, the cars, they all look the same. It's the same car for all team. It's mandatory by the regulations. But what differs are the powertrains. So here we really have the Maserati Citroën, Maserati DS, they're using the CS powertrain. Other teams use their own electric powertrains, and this is where we have the real competition, even if the cars, besides this, are standardized. In the first season, we had a lot of very well-known names. Penske, also using the DS powertrain. We have the Works Jaguar, making sense, focusing now on e-mobility. I mean, we just had the controversial new redesign, rebranding of Jaguar, which in focus new target groups, and of course, this aligns with an e-mobility strategy. We have Porsche having its own e-drive. We have Nissan Andretti using the Porsche engine powertrain. Mahindra, the Indian NIO from China. Envision using the Jaguar technology. Maserati, the German Up team using the Indian Mahindra powertrain. And McLaren using Nissan. Tracks that year had been Mexico City, Diriyah, Hyderabad, Cape Town, Sao Paulo, Berlin, Monaco, Jakarta, Rome, London. As the races are shorter, doing the regulations using electric powertrain, also the racetracks are smaller, so they have been not that much classic racetracks, but they are racing often on temporary city tracks. Also, maybe to attend other spectators, not the classical petrol heads who would really travel to a racetrack for the whole weekend, but people living, but maybe more an urban target group, people who based on mindset maybe, but also based on the advantages that they're not that dependent on long drives, and people who may consider maybe more easily buying e-cars than if you would live outside the big urban area. So various factors. Again, which lead to this decision. The champion had been this year Jake Dennis for the Avalanche Andretti team. Then our Maserati drivers, first year, quite okay. 7th position for Maximilian Günther and 14 for Eduardo Mortara. Team championship had been the Envision Racing team, and Maserati unfortunately only came in on the 6th position, but again, first year, and you have to learn. Then 23 to 24, so you see the Formula One season is a little bit besides Formula One, going from the second half to the first half of the next year. Here we have Pascal Wehrlein, also former Formula One driver, very talented, but unfortunately never at the right place at the right time. And then that's why he decided, as many who not made it in Formula One, switch to Formula E. Pascal Wehrlein, TAG, also a known name in combination and combined with Porsche, be known from 1980s Formula One. TAG Heuer, Porsche Formula One E team. Maserati drivers, yeah, still not that successful. Maximilian Günther, 8th position. I think we can agree, quite disappointing for the team. And the 14th, Jihan Daruvala, is the second driver. The championship had been won by Jaguar, TCS Racing, and Maserati, again, disappointing from my point of view, only the 8th position. So where we will be now, the season is 2024-25. The races will be Sao Paulo, Mexico City, Jeddah, Miami, Monaco, Tokyo, Shanghai, Jakarta, Berlin, London. Teams are changing. Some famous names have left, as McLaren and Mercedes. So interesting strategy, especially I would say for Mercedes, as they are selling e-cars to go away from Formula E and focus on Formula One, but they will have their reasons, I'm sure. Teams Porsche, Maserati, Kiro using the Porsche powertrain, Envision using a Jaguar, Neom using Nissan DS, they own Stellantis DS, same as Maserati, Jaguar stays on, which makes pretty much sense if you see the actual rebranding of the Jaguar cars. Abt will use Lola Yamaha, also a brand which we already had in Formula One. I mean, we had Lola less as a car manufacturer, sorry, as an engine manufacturer, but doing chassis, bodies, etc. And Yamaha had been a powertrain provider in Formula One in 1990s. Not that successful and only a few years, but they are back. Nissan, Mahindra, and again Andretti with Porsche, and we will see how this will continue, as Andretti will also be involved in the Cadillac Ferrari team, which we will have in 2026 on Formula One starting grid. On the right, you see the the Maserati car for the new season. Again, in a typical Maserati blue, makes sense, as blue is often used for e-mobility. And also, I mean, it's the sign for the sea, and we see, of course, the famous Maserati badge. As driver, we will have Stoffel Van Dorn, similar as Pascal Wehrlein, I think a talented driver. He was active in Formula One for the Maserati team, but for whatever reason didn't make it there. I don't think it was that much the lack of talent from my point of view, but he was not at the right time at McLaren, strongly struggled there, and that was the quite short end of his Formula One career. But he was Formula E champion in 21, 22 with the Mercedes team, and now next year or this year, better said, he will be part of the Maserati team together with Jake Hughes. And you see here the two new cars on the photo, one of the various press photos I'm using for this podcast. With this, I want to speak a little bit about Formula E. As you know, we are a Formula One podcast. So my opinion, you may say it's the opinion of a Formula One fan about Formula E. Don't worry, it will not be that negative, as there are many positive points related to Formula E, of course. Formula E, officially the ABB FIA Formula E World Championship, is a single-seater motorsport championship for electric cars. The series was conceived in 2011 in Paris by FIA President Jean Todt. You see him on the left, as he still had been with the Ferrari team, and Spanish businessman Alejandro Agag, who is also the current chairman of Formula E Holdings. The inaugural championship race was held in Beijing in September 2014. Also, quite logical choice, as you know from all the media, China and Chinese manufacturers are quite strong in e-mobility. Since 2020, the series has FIA World Championship status. The Formula E Championship is currently contested by 11 teams with 2 drivers each, quite similar to Formula One, so quite similar to classic motorsports, classic Formula Motorsports. The sport features electric-powered race cars similar in style, well, quite identical in style. What differs is the livery to the hybrid drive cars of Formula One. Racing generally takes place on temporary city center street circuits, which are 1.9 to 3.4 kilometers long, so shorter many times than Formula One racetracks, and often temporary racetracks, a thing which changes a little bit now. This may be based on 2 factors. The electric drives get better, so you can use longer racetracks. And also, now you may want to focus not only on these urban target groups, but also get a little bit more of classic motorsports fans interested into Formula E. So I think these are the factors. But we go a little bit away from the city racetracks, also including more and more classic racetracks. We have now the third generation of the standardized Formula E cars. The Formula E Generation 3, also known as Spark Gen 3 or simply Gen 3, is an electric Formula race car designed for use in the FIA Formula E Championship. The car is the successor of the SRT 05E and is constructed by Spark Racing Technology. It will be used as the base car for all manufacturers and teams starting 2022 to 23. Formula E World Championship onwards. Spark Racing Technology (SRT) is a motorsport manufacturer specialized in the development and engineering of high-performance electric vehicles and models. The company was founded by Frédéric Vasseur. You may know this person, team manager for Sauber, now for the Scuderia Ferrari, to become the sole chassis supplier for the FIA Formula E Championship, but is now involved in other projects as well. Batteries are supplied by Williams Advanced Engineering, also quite famous from Formula One. The estimated top speed will be set at 322 kilometers per hour. The battery will also be designed to be able to handle fast charging at rates of up to 800 HP, allowing pit stop recharging into the championship for the first time. So you see, technology is developing, and Formula E becomes a little bit more similar than, for example, Formula One. So you see some of the designs based on the Gen 3 cars. On the left, orange. You may imagine this is the McLaren. On the right, this is which is it's the Mahindra. Cupra is, of course, a Volkswagen Group. They are a Spanish e-car brand. And in the on bottom the Envision car. So what reminds me this the sign off for me it to classic end of 1960s, beginning of 70 wedge design as we saw it maybe emerging from Italy, but we also saw it, for example, in French designs and in Japanese car design in that time, for example, with the Dome Zero. With this, I want to invite you, please check out our data-driven Formula One episode about the Dome Formula One project, where we speak also a little bit about the Dome Zero, which has this beautiful classic wedge design. On the left, this is the Alfa Romeo Carrabo, perfect example of wedge design. You can see this extraordinary car at the Alfa Romeo Historic Museum, which is a strong recommendation from my side. If you are in the Milan area, North Italy, spend one day or half a day at the Alfa Romeo Museum. It's really one of the most beautiful car museums on the planet. Also, the blue Maserati Formula E car reminds me to Super Mario with having this Formula E design, even in blue. And here you see it with my personal avatar. And, uh, and I come back to Super Mario. Some of the special things we have in Formula E is, for example, the fan boost. Unfortunately, this was discontinued after 2022-20 season. Formula E's fan boost was a feature that allowed fans to vote for their favorite driver during the race. To support their driver, fans could vote by using the official Formula E app or website, social media platforms as Twitter, as it was still called back in the times, or through the silent voting areas at the race events. The 5 drivers with the most votes received a power boost during the second half of the race, which temporarily increases their car's power output. As option to keep races open until the end, including a Hollywood-like final, I like to call it, where especially the fan favorites get the opportunity to intervene decisively. To ensure such possibility, Formula E uses like a personal digital twin of its drivers, including an evaluation of the used social media channels. So we had the opportunity, we had all Formula E drivers together with their social media, where they directly have the opportunity to speak to the fans, maybe speak with the friends, and maybe the drivers who are most successful with this social media usage, thanks to this likelihood, get supported by their fans who give them extra boost so that the hero, and coming back to Hollywood, so the hero at the end can attack again and maybe fight for victory and points. And I think this is a quite interesting concept, of course, against the classic motor racing, but something which maybe had been more appealing, or they thought it would have been appealing for new generations who have a different mindset, but maybe not. And that's why the reason why they discontinued this again. But I mean, it was interesting, and why not try out new things? Formula E attack mode from season 2018 to 19 to from the season 2018-19 to 21-22, drivers could pass through a special designated area. If they did so, they activated the attack mode. This allowed the drivers to temporarily activate additional horsepower, for example, required to overtake an opponent or defend themselves against others. And to what reminds us this? Yes, to games like Super Mario Racing, known from Nintendo, as here you drive in the game over some special feats, special highlighted, and when you do so, you get a turbo boost, and for some seconds go much faster again. Good to again attack and fight for victory. And let me show it to you. You see here my avatar driving Super Mario. Good start. Oops. accident. Here I get some extras. And here, I'm jumping. And here I'm driving over such areas, and you see I'm accelerating much, much faster. And with this, I had the opportunity to again fight for victory. With this, you have to combine the real and the virtual world, meaning you have to have the drivers have sensors, heavily drivers virtually driving on the same racetrack, because here on a physical racetrack, there's not something uh, built on the racetracks, and then you push a button and then it happens. But no, you have to virtually sensor if you are on this special field, and then give the message to the engine, the powertrain, to provide more power for, I don't know, let's say 5-10 seconds. So this was the idea. And here they made physical racing similar to virtual racing like Super Mario. So if you want to make Formula E appealing for new generations who have been grown up driving the different versions of Super Mario Kart on their Nintendo, it was an interesting feature to implement, even though also this they changed again. I and to make it Formula E again a more conservative racing series. For season 2022 to 23, the attack mode format was simplified. Instead of having a varying number of activation zone passes and different durations for each attack mode period, drivers now have a total of 4 minutes of attack mode. This time is divided into 2 activation periods during the race. So we don't have, like in Mario Kart, that you have to drive over special places on the racetrack, but you just have this 4 minutes in general. Personally, I mean, I see this is quite similar than Formula One now, where you have also this opportunities when you're behind a driver. I'm a little bit I'm a little bit sorry that they simplified it. I thought it's a quite interesting idea, having race series a little bit more similar as we know from the virtual reality from gaming. So I don't know why they thought that they want to simplify this, make Formula E more conservative. Again, I mean, we have a different series than Formula One. Why you want to make it more similar to Formula One? But this is my personal opinion. And then we also have the Attack Charge. In season 22 to 23, a new feature called Attack Charge was planned to debut in a few races later in the season. However, delays in producing fast chargers due to issues with the General 3 car's new batteries caused setbacks. Teams also criticized the idea of charging the race format midway through the season. As a result, the introduction of Attack Charge was postponed and was still not ready by the season end 2023-24, which is right now. In races with attack charge, teams will need to make a mandatory 30 seconds pit stop to recharge a car's batteries. So again, they want to include mandatory pit stop and provide the spectators, the fans, the show of pit stops, which can be very fast, but also there's a lot of opportunities that something is going wrong. So create it a little bit more spectacular, more tragedy, more opportunity for tragedies, and this potentially make Formula E more interesting. This stop will unlock 2 enhanced attack mode boosts and provide drivers with an additional 4 kVh of power for the rest of the race. So of course also strategy, considering, do I need this? Do I don't need this? Similar as in Formula One, do I need to change my tires 2 times or maybe just 1 time? So again, more strategy with such an option. Something what is missing to make Formula E then that attractive than Formula One, from my point of view, is that there's no dedicated Formula E racing game. We have it included in other racing games, like three real racing. So you can drive Formula E race cars, but there's no dedicated car game like the annual Formula One on the PlayStation. And I think this is something which would benefit to promote the game, the season, to the younger generations. Something what existed, I don't know if it was in Thrill Racing or in another game, ghost mode, meaning the data of the real races had been available in the racing game as a ghost. So maybe not live, but later you can drive in the same race as that here in this season the real drivers did, and you see how which position in the race had been the real drivers in the real cars, and you can see, am I fast as them, or I'm even faster. Another interesting part, I mean, of course, driving a car on a computer is something different than driving it really on the physical racetrack, but a nice feature. But I think it's not does not exist anymore. I mean, we have similar, for example, in the GT games, Gran Turismo on PlayStation, a ghost mode where you can see as a ghost where you have been maybe in the lab before. Again, it's a ghost, meaning you don't have to physically pass a car, but it's like you can go slightly through the car. That's why it's called ghost, because it just shows you where you had been, but it's not like you have that you're fighting with an earlier version of yourself, which would be quite interesting to implement, of course. So my conclusion about Formula E, or as I call it, Formula E from the perspective of a Formula One fan. The top speed of Formula E cars are a little bit lower than Formula One. Formula One can go up to 360, depending where, which house specification they run the engine, and so on and so on. So a little bit slower, but I don't think this really matters. If you see a car 320 kilometers per hour or 360, it's all very fast as a spectator. The focus on the city streets, it's said we are going away from this a little bit, seeing the cars more on classic racing tracks, and this is something as a Formula One fan I like to see. Races are you can watch, follow, I think even live in full on YouTube, so you don't have to pay. And this is, of course, quite positive. The sound of the engine, of course, petrol heads, this is a main factor. And I must admit, this brings me out a little bit, and something I'm missing. If you hear this zzz, zzz, zzz electric sound of the powertrains, it doesn't give me the same atmosphere than the sound of a Formula One engine. Maybe for younger generations who are more used to grown up with e-cars, for them it's different. But let's say as a classic Formula One fan, this is of course one negative side. Lengths, we have two shorter races instead of one long race. We had this also in classic motorsports. I remember this from 1990s German touring cars, where we had two races. So I would be fine with this. Even honestly, I prefer one long race. As it's one race, of course, here the victory is more important than the victory in one of such a shorter race. Standardization, again, Formula E cars differ with the powertrain they use, maybe the setup of the team, etc. But the cars all look the same. And this is another downside from my personal point, as even on related to modern Formula One, I must say, cars. It's a little bit sad that the cars, of course, based on aerodynamics developments, etc., practically all look very similar. Would be very difficult to distinguish them if they wouldn't have the different liveries. So this is already a downside of modern Formula One, and having cars who completely look the same also doesn't attract uh, me as a fan that much. So the atmosphere, again, we don't have the classic race fans. We have different kind of spectators. Also, I mean, as you see, the main sponsor of the series is ABB, technology company, B2B, not selling to consumers. And of course, this already shows that the series is more for technology fans, e-mobility fans, and less aiming at classic motorsport fans. So if you want to change this, I think the main sponsor should be something big with consumers, like let's say Coca-Cola, Heineken, whatever. So the big brands, not very healthy, but of course spending a lot of marketing for the end consumer. And as I said, last point, I think to really make Formula E bigger, you would need one annual sports game as Formula One has. So you see, even if I'm coming from classic Formula One, I can say that there's great motorsports, great racing in Formula E. If you have an open mind, give it a try. Yeah, some things honestly I miss. Again, the sound of the engines I miss. But be honest, it's great motorsports. We have great teams. We have very well-known names there. As I said, we have Maserati, we have Porsche, we had McLaren, we had Mercedes, so we have a Jaguar. We even have a all Chinese team using a Chinese powertrain. So they are big classic teams even in the sports and using classic liveries. Well, at least in we have the classic blue in Maserati. We had the orange papaya of McLaren. So I mean, and I think the series is developing, especially as the powertrains become better and better. I see the series becoming more classic. As I said, they changed the regulations. From my point of view, also a little bit sorry that they became more similar to Formula One because they are not Formula One. So why not use a little bit more the idea of combining virtual and physical worlds as our new generation C, generation Alpha. I mean, they are for them physical virtual worlds. They are all one reality, one perception. So why not using this as an opportunity to distinguish Formula E from other series, Formula One, Formula 2, whatever. But again, my message here, please give it a try. Again, their races you can watch for free and on YouTube. Also, you find all races, they are still there on YouTube. So take a look at some of the races. Yeah, maybe you like it, especially as these races are also outside the official Formula One agenda. And there's no need that you just follow one series. You can watch Formula One, Formula E, but again, give it a chance. Maybe you like it, maybe you'll not like it. Okay, that's today's episode, Maserati from Formula One to Formula E. If you liked it, please follow us, subscribe our channel, like this episode, would be highly appreciated. And again, thanks a lot for watching and maybe see you the next time. Maybe also the next episode will be together again with Gunnar Pogrevna. We will see. Thank you. Bye bye.